There are many shells online that say things like war is a hoax. They claim that World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, even the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, which are kind of recent, now not that recent, already almost 20 years old, those wars, but recent to the generation, I mean, they claim that all war that have taken place throughout human history was staged. It was just actors pretending. Those are shells. And shells, as I mentioned before, they're here to spread violence. Not directly physical violence, even though it will work out the physical violence, they're here to spread contention. But there is a real fact to what they're saying, but the direction they're sending you in is wrong. There are real wars going on, okay? And there are troops coming back from Iraq, Afghanistan, from other places who are traumatized, suffer PTSD, sometimes complex PTSD. And many veterans also, man, it don't end up well with them. I'm not saying all, but many of them, it doesn't end up well. Especially those that served in the older wars. I'm not just talking about the United States, I'm talking about military worldwide. But to what extent is war a hoax? I'm going to explain in this video. Let me put this camera still. Okay. War is a hoax in the sense that your perception has been altered by witchcraft. Because your perception has been altered, you see things upside down. And because you see things upside down and inside out, you can't make sound judgment. So every decision you make will be a self-destructive one. That is what witchcraft does to you. Now, when it comes to individual cases, for example, you have a warlock that bewitched a young woman, and the young woman is so in love, so crazy about the guy, even though the guy is a narcissist. Again, not all pagans are benevolent. Not all pagans have good intentions, okay? There are many pagans that just want to do the right thing, but their methods are demonic. In this case, you have a pagan who is malevolent and is exploiting females. But he bewitched this young woman and she can't think straight. So every decision she makes is self-destructive. She has been bewitched. Okay? It happens all the way around also that you have a witch and she is preying on men, and through her witchcraft she bewitches the man so the man can't think straight. But the men still have agency, they can still think, but they can't think straight. It's not that they can't think at all, they become like a plant in a room, but they can't think straight. You get what I'm saying here? Witchcraft is also used collectively on a population. And this is how it works. You violate the basic human need for security. Human beings, okay, let me pick up a piece of paper so I can illustrate this to you. Be patient with me, I make this video spontaneously, I didn't prepare anything. Okay, let's say this, okay, I'm going to draw this very quickly. Okay. Forgive my poor handwriting because I'm writing quickly here, but okay, what do you see here? This is a triangle. So you have security, safety, and relevance. This pyramid, or better said, this triangle reveals the basic human needs. The soulish need for security and safety is also a physical one. Obvious, your body needs safety. Therefore, for your body to be safe, it needs security. That means it has to be guaranteed food, water, air, all that's necessary. That's security. Okay? Relevance is a soulish need that every human being has. Okay? If you violate someone's security, then they don't feel safe. And when they don't feel safe, they'll crave for relevance. because the brain is designed in such a way that once relevance is shown, the brain perceives it as safe. Why? Because relevancy means that there's security because you're relevant and therefore you're safe. These three are interconnected. You can't separate them from each other. What it comes down to is that when you want to bewitch a whole population, you violate their need for relevance. Or you violate directly their need for safety. That's through terrorist attacks or things like that. But a more subtle way is to violate their need for relevance. But I'm going to talk about the need for relevance now. Once you violate their need for relevance, people feel insecure. But this insecurity is not a natural insecurity. Okay, I explained before, as a human being, you are a vulnerable creature. You're also in a mortal body. Even if your body would be immortal, you're still a vulnerable creature. Okay? So you don't know everything. You can't do everything by yourself. So you need external aid. That's what it means to be a creature. That's what it means to be a human being. And there's nothing wrong with that. So to be relevant is very important. Because to be relevant means that people are looking after you. People care for you. And because you are important and people pay attention to you, you're secure. Because there's attention going to you. And because you're secure, your brain perceives this as safety. Now look, in a domestic violence situation where the husband is exploiting the wife feels relevant. Okay? And therefore the brain associates this with security. And she is secure of a cycle of violence. There's an intoxication. When it escalates, then there's the honeymoon phase. And this goes on and on. So the brain gets addicted to the cycle of intoxication and relief. So the brain is confused and perceives this as security. And because the brain is settled that this is security, you feel relevant. And because you feel relevant, you think you're safe, while it's not the case. This is also called the Stockholm Syndrome. I believe there are more names for it, but that's how it works in individual domestic violence situations. Now that same thing is practiced collectively. You violate the sense of relevance of a population, and when the anxiety arises, you push it further with attacks on their security. And that, when you do this, oh there are going to be individuals in that community that will escalate. They can't handle the pressure. And because they can't handle the pressure, they will malfunction. They'll attack people. They go crazy or accidents happen. And now when that happens, there's unsafety in the community. Real physical unsafety. So now the people want to get rid of the unsafety. And then a leader comes by, or a group of people come by, and they point out the unsafety. They recognize the pain of the people. And therefore people feel relevant. And because they give an ear to the people, and they make effort for the people, the people associate this with security. And that's how you keep people hooked. That doesn't mean that people are safe. It just means they're hooked. Look at this again. Okay. How does this relate to wars and hoax? Okay. I'm going to use a colonial example again, just to point this out to you. You can use other examples and explain this. If you want to mirror this video, or if you want to teach this by yourself, you can use other examples, okay? But I'm using examples of what's more familiar to me. Now, what you see here is a map of South America. Now, this map here, of course, it's a printed map. It's not a real map. It's printed. This image here shows South America around 1800, the beginning of the 19th century. And at the time, South America was divided into territories, Spanish America and Portuguese America. Portuguese America was called Brazil, and Spanish America was divided in autonomous kingdoms that were governed by marines, appointed by local viceroys, and the viceroy reported to Spain. And you had the Dutch, French, and British that had some marine bases in the Guyanas over here. Well, the Dutch didn't really have marine bases, but they had, corporations from Europe that were settled there for the export of sugar, tobacco, and other products were grown and in those plantations over there. Often slave labor was used. And that was the Guyanas. Beside the Guyanas, these were all autonomous kingdoms, and Portuguese America became an autonomous kingdom also, the Kingdom of Brazil. So these were all local nations already. Okay? In that time, there was no war between those countries. Why? Spain was the dominant power here. Portugal was always in the shadow of Spain. If we even look at the map, Portugal is tiny compared to Spain. And also in population size, at the time, Portugal was tiny compared to Spain. Portugal had around 2.5 million people, Spain had around 10.3 million, around 1800 I believe. So, well, Spain was the dominant actor here. You had the Spanish Navy that circled around South America to guard against pirates. So, there was no war. The Indian ethnicities over here, also the mestizos, which are the mixed ethnicities, and also the European migrants, some were already born in the migrant communities. They lived side by side, they cooperated with one another, there was no military conflict between them. There were issues in the Montevideo province, today we call it Uruguay, because the Portuguese wanted it back from Spain, but that's another subject. There was no war. There was no reason for war because it all belongs to basically the same country. Well, Portuguese America was an extension of Portugal, but Portugal was in the shadow of Spain, so really they belong to the same country, kind of. They had two flags, the Portuguese flag and the Spanish flag. The Spanish flag, which you see over here, was dominant. Okay, nice. Yes. So, if during that time anyone would go around and say there is war, people would look up at you and say, oh, did France attack Spain? Or did Poland attack Russia? Or that's what they would think. Because in the Americas, there were no military conflicts. Why? There was an equilibrium of economic peace. And economics is the domain, they call it discipline, where people look for security. Okay? With the military, they want safety. With the economy, they want security. And with culture, they want relevance. Okay? So during that time, there was no military conflict between them. After separating from Spain, around 1830s, after that, there was military conflict. Hold on a minute. 20 years earlier, they all waved the Spanish flag. No, not 20, some say 15 years earlier, around 1815, they all waved the red and yellow flag of Spain. They still speak the same language, Spanish. So what has changed? Now, their need for relevance of being part of the Spanish Empire is gone. So their security economic is also gone because Spain had one coin, which was stable. The Spanish real or the Spanish dollar. The Spanish dollar is 8 real, which was a silver coin. It was an international standard. That's gone also. So the need for relevance is violated and also the need for security. So now this anxiety causes unsafety. And it's this unsafety that the pagan rulers of the world will use to exploit the population. So what happened was that the pagan rulers that ran those Spanish republics, the anxiety that came because of their security was taken away from them, they used it at the other. What happened was that, for example, you had the people from the Kingdom of Charcas, which later became the Republic of Colombia. I'm saying wrong. The Kingdom of Charcas became the Republic of Bolivia, and the Kingdom of New Granada became Colombia. Okay, I spoke too fast. I don't want to confuse the two, but here's the thing. Simon Bolivar became the president of Colombia, but he later also was installed as president of Bolivia, because Bolivia is named after Bolivar. That's why I got confused in this presentation, but okay. The Kingdom of Charcas, located over here, with X to C, became the Republic of Bolivia. Now, they were Bolivians now, they were not Spaniards anymore. But who was a Bolivian? As a community, people want relevance. Now, the relevance as being Spaniards was gone. So now they're Bolivians, but who is a Bolivian? Are the migrants from Europe also Bolivian? Are those Indian tribes with their own customs Bolivian? What makes you a Bolivian? Are you a Bolivian because you adhere to Simon Bolivar? So that means when you don't adhere to Simon Bolivar, then you're not a Bolivian? What is it? So, what happened was that they had no security. And also monetarily, things went backwards. You had the Kingdom of Chile, which became the Republic of Chile. And, well, during the Spanish time, it was a thin populated region. And in the north, there wasn't much contact with Peru, because the Kingdom of Chile was supervised from Peru. But you had this part of the coastline that belonged to the Kingdom of Charcas. Now, in the Republican time, after they separated from Spain, the Chileans who lived in the north wanted to have better access to Peru. But the Bolivian Republic said, not going to happen. So now, the Chileans they wanted to solidify their security as a Chilean people. But the Bolivians want to do the same. So now there was tension in both places. But there's the thing. The common people just wanted to get on with their daily lives. But they were affected by what happened economically. Because till 1815, kind of, you still had the Spanish real economy was secure. When there was exploitation happening by certain corporations, the Spanish judges would come in and you would be in big trouble. That was gone. So now locally, in the Republic of Bolivia and in the Republic of Chile, in both republics, there were exploitation happening here and there, inwardly. And people had a lot of frustration, there was anger. It led to physical discomfort, it led to unsafety. Now this negative energy that's floating around, both in Bolivia and also in Chile. The pagan rulers of Spanish America was not part of Spain anymore, but the pagan rulers saw it this way. You have people there in Bolivia that are frustrated, and you have those in Chile that are frustrated. What are you going to do about it? We're going to use it to feed the demons. So, in Chile, the population wanted relief, and in Bolivia it wanted relief. So, they already violated in their need for relevance and security. So now you transfer the negative energy onto the young men of the community. So now the young men are pressured to do something about it. And in this case, in Chile, the pagan rulers pointed the blame at Bolivia. And in Bolivia, the pagan rulers pointed the blame at Chile. But the pagan rulers, both in Bolivia and Chile, were friends with one another. They knew one another. But the locals, the common people, believed that it was the fault of those Chileans or those Bolivians. Even though it were them locally that tolerated violence amongst each other. They didn't want to see that. They didn't want to be faced. They didn't want to face that. It was much easier to see the Bolivians or the Chileans as the cause. And now the young men were to blame because they thought, you have to be a man, do something about it, fight for your country. So the pagan rulers had their agents, the generals that led Chilean young men towards this place and also Bolivian young men towards this place. And a big massacre happened. The young men killed one another. Those young men returned home. They were traumatized. And also at home, the violence continued. In the houses, with their wives, in their families. Some remained killing because they were out of their mind. So in this case, both the Chileans and the Bolivians have been traumatized. And Chile got the part at the shores, that was agreed upon before by the pagan rulers that Chile's territory would be extended. So now the Bolivians are traumatized, means the people living there are called Bolivians, and the people who live in the territory of Chile, they're both traumatized. And the Bolivians experienced this as defeat because they lost access to sea. Now they depend upon those Chileans, humiliated them. And the Chileans are given some compensation with more territory, but they've lost many of their young men. So both peoples are traumatized now. And the pagan rulers at the same time, they will give much compensation, like the red light districts, or you didn't have mainstream media back then, but you had local media that they would use. Or they would use sports for it. There's nothing wrong with sports, but you can use sports as a matter to relieve the people. And that's how it went. Okay? So in this case, was the war real? There were fights, those fights were real. But the war itself was a hoax. Because the people living in the territory of Bolivia did not have anything directly against people in Chile. Neither the people in Chile against people in Bolivia. Because remember, about 50 years earlier, or maybe 60 years earlier, like 1 or 2 generations earlier, those people had the same flag. They saluted to King Fernando of Spain, or some of King Charles of Spain, and they could travel freely throughout the region because of Spanish America. Now there were these imaginary lines. There's Bolivia, there's Chile, and now they sort of had to fight to defend imaginary lines. While they spoke the same language, they had similar customs, were actually the same people, but now they had to fight to defend something that wasn't there. The war was a hoax. The fights were real, but the war was a hoax. And the hoax intended to blind the people that they were being robbed. The Chileans now felt a boost at that. Man, our young men fought and got extra territory. We're the winners. No, you're not the winners. Because your many of your young men died. Some of them that came back are traumatized. And now you have children. The children of those men that returned, they grow up in traumatized households. Now you have generational trauma. And that will work out. So you haven't won anything, Chileans. Same in Bolivia. So the fights were real, but the war was a hoax. Remember this. The pagan rulers attack your need for relevance, which will cause a friction in your need for security, and those two will lead to physical unsafety. And when the physical unsafety comes, they offer you a counterfeit solution for your need of relevance, and that's how they trap you. That's how it goes on and on and on. This is the formula of all wars. This is the formula of all wars since the Greek Empire was established by Alexander of Macedonia, who was also Apollo, the beast. I've already explained that Alexander was a Nephilim. I'm not going into it again. And the world worships, I'm saying the pagan rulers of this world, they worship Apollo. Apollo is whom the Bible in Revelation chapter 9, verse 11 calls the Antichrist, son of perdition. And we have a statue of Apollo in New York. We call the Statue of Liberty, which is a transgendered image of Apollo. The pagan rulers of this world reveal whom they worship. So, of course, before the Greek Empire, there were wars. Okay, I'm not claiming there were no conflicts, but back then it were men that were hired to fight battles for kings, and sometimes the population was involved. Okay, I'm not saying that tricks were not used by the pagan rulers before the Greek Empire, but since the Greek Empire, we have an Apollonistic world order, and in Apollonistic world order, all wars are hoaxes. The fight on the ground, and since the 20th century in the air or on sea, or throughout colonial times on sea, they are real and real victims, and people die, but the war is a hoax. And it's intended to keep your perception blurred. Now you understand why, and I'm talking about what they call Latin America, why so many of those leaders there make very weird decisions. It's because they are agents of the big rulers of this world. Look at it this way. By the way, I'm using the Americas now as an example. If you want to teach this, you can use other examples. You can use Europe example or Asia. Asia is also a good example. I'll come back to Asia later on. Spain, the Spanish Empire, was ruled by the Bourbon dynasty, which was the gang of pagan rulers that ruled both France and Spain. They had local rulers who also were part of the same I would say the same pact. They all worship Apollo. So when there was dissatisfaction amongst the Creoles over here, the pagan rulers decided, you know what? We're going to use this dissatisfaction, keep these people in the negative, because that's what Apollo wants. That's what Satan wants, that all these people in the negative. So you had those agents that came by, those freedom fighters that fought against Spain. The great region became independent, but they had no working economy, no own military, no own navy, no trade relations with the world. They had nothing. So now the contention of the betrayal worked out against each other. But this was kept to a minimum, with only a few escalations here and there. There was even a war called the Saltpeter's War, in which Peru, the pagan rulers in Peru, Bolivia, and Paraguay fought a war that cost the lives of the majority of men in Paraguay. I believe there were like 200,000 women left with only, like, I believe 90,000 men or something like that, or very few men. Very brutal. Okay, those were blood sacrifices. But overall, in Spanish America, things remained stagnant. It was only after the 1950s, due to the emergence of mainstream media and television, and more interconnectedness in spreading of news to the Spanish republics, that the people in the Spanish republics realized, hold on a minute, why are we stagnating like this? Why is our infrastructure so backwards? Why don't we have efficient railways? The United States, itself, which is a collection of ethnicities, they have working railways. Why don't we have it? It's then that the population woke up. And they turned on their leaders, but the leaders then began to use this war thing to divert their attention. Now, there is not that much military war between the states in Latin America, but internally, you have conflicts, military conflicts. In Colombia. You have the FARC now has surrendered weapons, I believe a while ago. But you still have militias fighting. So war is still being used by the big rulers, but the wars are hoaxes. The fights are real, but the wars are hoaxes. That's why Latin America is so infested with violence. And that's why their institutions are so weak. It's designed that way, to keep the population inactive so the demons can feed themselves. That's the bigger picture behind it. And that's the bigger picture behind war. War is a hoax, and the fights are rituals conducted by the pagan rulers to feed the demons. And the common people, they comply to get relief. Because now they can discharge their negative energy towards the young men fighting. They want to discharge their energy on selected victims. But if everyone can discharge their negative energy here and there, everyone will begin to fight one another and kill one another. So the pagan rulers redirect the negative attention towards the young men, and from the young men, a portion now has to go out and prove themselves to be men by being trained to kill and eventually to die. And when they die, the common people are vindicated. They are relieved because their relevance as a nation or as a people is vindicated, because there were young men that were willing to die on their behalf. Or better said, there were young men that were willing to be victimized unto death on their behalf. That's why they feel relieved. And when they are relieved, you have the flag. that waves as validation that they are relevant. And now the economy is boosted because people are happy, they want to spend more, so the bank rulers, they print more money, and now the economy is boosted because of it. There's security. But where's the safety? There isn't. It's just relief. So, I would go to Asia again. The pagan rulers of Asia, since 200 BC, is all Polonistic. All those wars were hoaxes. And even some of the fights never happened. Okay? Look, when Japan modernized itself in the 19th century, it also initiated war against Russia and against China. It won both wars. Now, let me say this. It initiated fights. I'm going to describe this as won both fights, because wars were hoaxes, as I mentioned before. And those rituals, those fights of rituals were needed to validate the relevance and security of the people living in the Empire of Japan, that the changes that were going on were worth it. Because Japan used to be like a feudal landlord society, quite backwards, no railways, no telephone lines, none of that. And suddenly they received railways, telephone lines, they received a modern military, they received newspapers, they received foreign embassies. So it was a big change for the people. So the people felt threatened in their relevance. So their security was changing. So to convince the people that security was worth it, those fights occurred. War. So to conclude this, war is a hoax, but the fights are real. And the hoax is intended to prevent the common people from seeing that they need Christ Jesus as their Lord. Therefore, the pagan rulers have become the overlords of the common people by giving substitutes for the need of relevance, the need for security, and the need for safety. All needs that Christ himself meets 100% without the help of anyone else. But common people refuse to submit unto Christ. They refuse it. They are proud. And in their pride, they enable the pagan rulers to conduct war. So war is a hoax. Thanks for watching. Agree with Christ and be at peace.